Mentally or physically, success can be defined as getting up one more time after you've been knocked down over and over and over again. I want to welcome everyone to Triumphant Moments, where we highlight significant moments in life that are beyond the surface to encourage, inform, and inspire people to triumph over their life challenges. Today with me I have Mr. Solon Phillips. He is a partner of the General Litigation Group at Remus Enterprises Law Group, which is an experienced legal group professional with extensive experience working in law group firms while devoting much of his spare time in volunteer work and public service. Mr. Phillips, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Phillips, I really appreciate you taking out time to come here on the show. What we want to do is let's go ahead and dive right into it. First and foremost, what made you get into law initially?
What made me get into law? Initially, I was actually a pre-med student.
Okay.
I was organic chemistry, biology, all in the sciences. And then while I was waiting for acceptance into either UAB in Alabama or GW medical school, I took a job at a law firm in D.C. Okay. And once there, and I started to talk to the partners, and I saw the type of work they were doing, I made the career change, and rest is history.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, with that said, now, what type of law do you specialize in, or is it kind of across the board? Where do you specialize in as far as in legal assistance?
It's across the board. Attorneys, especially in certain jurisdictions, they're not allowed to say they specialize in anything.
Oh.
They concentrate on certain areas. My area of concentration is litigation across the board, family law. I do some civil rights, contracts, and real estate.
Okay. Now, as far as particularly with the family law, how much experience do you have in that particular section?
That area I probably have the most experience. I've been doing ever since law school, actually. I went through my own divorce and custody battles, and so that's always been a prized area of law for me.
So there appears to be a misconception surrounding fathers and the legal system. So what I wanted to ask you is, do fathers have as much rights as mothers in general? Because there seems to be a misconception out there that mothers have the dominant rights.
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever a child is born, it takes two, right? It takes a mother and a father, and both of those parents have equal rights. They share equal rights on all platforms.
So with that said, what are some common misconceptions about fathers' rights that you've ran into during your time in court?
Well, unfortunately, fathers think whether it's society has created this narrative that fathers don't have rights. I've had clients who walk into it thinking that they don't have equal rights, that it's some sort of privilege if they can just see their child. And that's not the case. They can see, spend time with, have shared custody, make shared decisions. They can do everything that the mother can do. There's nothing different just because the mother is the mother. The father is the father, and he has every right that she has. Now, if they go to court and it's found that one of the parents, be it the father or the mother, is not fit or not as fit as the other parent, that's when the law will step in and say, hey, this parent should be given primary residential custody or sole legal custody. But before that decision is made by a court, both parents stand on equal ground.
Now, tell us something about Remus Enterprises Law Group, and is this an area that y'all can assist people in general, fathers and mothers, but particularly right now we're talking about fathers. But tell us more about Remus Enterprise Law Group.
Yes, Remus Enterprises Law Group is a firm based in D.C., but we have attorneys in several states: Alabama, D.C., Maryland, Washington State, and soon to be New York. And we specialize, well, not specialize, we pride ourselves in storytelling. We believe that in every situation, people love stories, right? That's why Hollywood always does so well. And every client has their own story. It's not a fake or fiction story, it's a true story. And our attorneys are able to relay their story in a way that's persuasive and convincing, whether it be to a judge or a jury. And as the great president said, whoever tells the best story wins. Wow. That's our motto at Remus Enterprises.
Well, let's get a little bit of background here as far as education-wise. You graduated from American University, Washington College of Law?
Yes, sir.
Could you give us a little word of your experience there?
It was great. The school is located in Washington, D.C. I enjoyed the staff. I enjoyed my time there. Most people would say that they hate law school. I loved law school.
Wow.
Every class, every subject fascinated me.
Now, what also needs to be known is that you are a father. Could you tell us about your experience being a father while in law school?
Yeah, that was very tough. It was very challenging. It's why I focused my attention on family law, because during the time I was very young when I was in law school, and my then wife thought that she was actually too young to be a mother or a wife. So I was left with the two kids, and trying to go to any school as a single parent is challenging, much less law school. But, God was good and I made it through. And it was during this time that I realized that there was an unspoken bias towards men, meaning that when you go into the courtroom and you are a man and you say that I'm a single parent and I want custody of these children, there's an expectation that men cannot do that. In fact, I was represented by an attorney at the time, and she said, if you want custody of these children, you have to withdraw from law school.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's ridiculous. Why? She said, well, a father can't go to school and parent his kids. And I said, well, my mom was a single mother, and she went to school. So if she can do it, I can do it. And so I fired that attorney, and I went at it on my own. And I was fortunate enough to be awarded custody of my two kids.
If you could just help our listeners tap into the mentality that you had during that time to push through, during that struggle and those challenging times that you had, having your kids and not necessarily having everyone agree with your efforts of, obtaining your law degree and, having young kids at the same time. What was your mentality? What was going through your head to help you push through?
Back then, I think it was just the idea of knowing that what I knew was right. Sometimes you get a feeling in your gut of something that's right. Absolutely. And regardless of what people are saying, you're like, no, that's not right. And I knew that me not having custody just because I was a man was not right. And I had the case law to back it up, but society was saying one thing, but facts and the law was saying another thing. And so I went with the facts and the law. And don't get me wrong, this particular judge was not having it. It took years. It took a long fight. It took much, much, much opposition. But in the end, like your saying says, I was triumphant, and I was able to raise my kids.
Wow. Could you, being a great father yourself, could you shed some light on your perception of the emotional challenges that can come with just being a father and fatherhood?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a boy and a girl, and the two sexes are totally different, because as a father having a son, you could relate better to someone that you're familiar with. I was a boy once,
Right.
so I could relate to my son as a young man, as a boy coming up.
Right.
You know, we could play sports. You know, I know what it feels like to fall and get hurt and bounce back up. With the daughter, it's a little different. Not a little, a lot different. You know, there's certain things. There's certain things that she experiences as a 10-year-old, as a 13-year-old, as a 16-year-old that I have no clue. And, you know, little things like getting her hair done.
Wow.
You know, some fathers who can do that, hey, I take my hats off to you.
One shout out to the fathers that can do the hair.
Yeah, shout out. That is no joke. But that was something that I never learned how to do. So I would have to go and, you know, either ask people that I knew, which I didn't want to burden them, or take her to the hair salon and, you know, just work with it. But it's challenging, and there's so many challenges. But then there's joys too, you know, having those two with me. And now they're adults. My son is 24. My son is 25. My daughter's 21. So the joy is there.
Now, every situation with a child is not the same. You can't just take a formula and plug it into every situation of a child. You know, boy or girl, it's different attitudes, different temperaments, and different dispositions, and just different talents. So with that said, could you provide some tips that, you know, you felt were helpful engaging with your children in a positive sense that worked for you?
Just trying not to mold them into what you would want them to do or be.
Oh, wow. Great point.
You know, I think a lot of parents, they have great expectations for their children, and it's based on their own past experiences. And they fail to realize that their child is experiencing their own new experiences, and they're their own person. They have their own DNA, which even though they may share some of those traits with you, they have their own unique traits. And with my son, you know, I wanted him to be an athlete. I wanted him to do basketball. And he made the decision at 19 to go into the military. And I was thinking, where in the world did that come from? We don't have anybody in our family in the military, you know. But it was his decision. And having to support your child when they do something that was not on your to-do list,
right?
It could be humbling.
Well, with that said, was there ever a moment that he showed interest in what you were doing as far as your career choice, your profession? Was there ever a moment that he showed some interest in that?
Never.
Oh, wow.
My daughter had interest, and she was pre-med when she started college, but then she changed to accounting, and that was a shocker again. But as a parent, you have to bite your tongue and say, okay, if this is what you want to do, I support you.
Now, your daughter had an opportunity to attend college. How was being a parent from that distance? How challenging was that? What are some ups and downs that you think you might have experienced? Still being a father, but she's not in the same state as yourself.
And so there comes the difference with males and females.
Okay.
You know, with a boy and being a male, I feel more comfortable with him going out into the world. You know, I feel more at peace because he's a guy. He could get himself in trouble, but by the mere fact that he's a guy, there's an expectation, whether it's a false expectation or not, that he's better equipped to take care of himself. When you have a little girl and you're used to seeing her, literally, I used to carry her around in my palm of my hand. Now she's away and she's 18. In my mind, I'm still thinking she's just precious rose.
Right.
And so to know that she's around other 18-year-old guys, being a guy that was once 18, I know the mindset of these people. You know, and she's around that.
Right.
And I'm not there to say, hey, watch out for that one. Watch out for this one. it could be. That's where you have to have faith, and you have to just say, you know what, she can do it. She can handle it.
Was there ever a pushback where you started noticing that she wanted to kind of be isolated? It was no lost love, but she just wanted to be a little isolated from dad, like dad wasn't as cool, or was there ever that type of vibe?
Well, I think before she went away to college, when she was still here at 16, she would start, push back saying, let me do this, let me do that. Or she would be more secretive. And I didn't want to dig more because that would just cause her to be more secretive. I wasn't one of those parents that would be looking at her text messages on her phone.
Right.
If I had a wife or a mother was there, we could do that because, a mother doing that to a daughter is different than a father doing it.
Wow.
So I think being a single father to a female, I think she was allowed to get away with more just because of the sex difference.
Wow.
Like for example, I'm big on fitness.
Right.
And I'll have my son go to the gym. We'll go to the track. No excuses. But my daughter, when she was 16, we go to the track. I was like, come on, let's go. She'll say, I have cramps. I'm like, so come on, let's go. You don't understand. One time she literally laid on the street.
Right, right.
I'm like, what is wrong with you? You don't understand. I'm like, all right, go back inside. You're right, I don't.
It almost sounds as if just like kryptonite to Superman, that they have that ability to make you just kind of,
Yeah. I mean, they have that advantage of saying you don't get it. Whereas if her mother was there, her mother could say, oh, I have cramps all the time. I still go. Come on, let's do it.
Boom, right there.
I can't say that.
And see, that is another area, another section of life's challenges. You ultimately became a single father, and it didn't necessarily start off like that, but you became a single father. So the actual transition mentally for you, I can imagine that was challenging.
Yeah, it definitely was. And one thing that I'm seeing in the court system now is that there are a lot of men stepping up wanting that challenge.
Wow.
And at one point in time, the narrative was men are running from that. We hear the expression,
wow,
a deadbeat dad, meaning that the dad is dead to the child. But now I'm having people come to me saying, hey, I slept with this lady. She had my baby. I want to be in that child's life. And I would tell them, I say, hey, well, if you open that door, there might be child support issues. There might be a lot of, I don't care. I want it.
That poses another question here. One, what do you think has caused that uptick? I mean, I see the times that we're in right now, but what do you think has caused that uptick in fathers saying, okay, no, let me step up to the plate. Let me get some more time.
I don't know. I don't know if it might have always been there. And the narrative, the few men who would say, I don't want it, that's what was pushed out into society. And so society focused on that. But men may have always wanted that responsibility.
Wow.
That whole deadbeat dad thing might be a myth.
Wow.
Meaning that there are some, there's some deadbeat mothers too, but the idea that the majority of men was running away from the responsibility of being a parent, that might have never been. When I was coming up, you're probably too young to remember, but there was this singer called Cheryl Pepsi Raleigh. She had a song, Thanks for My Child. And in the video,
I don't recognize that. Yep, you're right. Go ahead.
in the video, there was a guy, and I will never forget, he had on these like red Reeboks, and he was literally running down the street, and they were symbolizing that's what fathers do. They run away from the responsibility.
Oh, wow.
And the song is Thanks for My Child. Even though my man has ran away free, the love I have in my baby is the love I have in me. And the whole idea is that's what fathers do. They run.
Wow.
I don't think that's true. Some, yes.
Right. but
but
not
not the
all.
majority.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the majority. I need my fathers to really sit back and listen here. I mean, everyone in general, actually, because we could work together to kind of push away the stigma. But there is a perception out here. Let me make it clear. There is a perception. There's a perception out there that being late on child support or having back child support means you're a bad father. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and it just depends on the situation. I mean, some instances, the father didn't know that the child existed. And during the whole time that the mother is intentionally keeping the child away from the father, child support is racking up. So by the time the father steps into the picture, he is financially incapable of meeting that demand of paying back child support. That's one scenario.
Okay.
Another scenario is, and I actually had a real life situation where the children, the mother decided to take the child to another state. The children were 18 already, and they stayed in the state. But unbeknownst to him, she was calculating child support.
Wow.
And so she hit him with a $100,000 child support bill. And she had all these years in where he was actually taking care of the child, but they didn't have any official order. So it became a big mess. And the narrative was he was never paying child support because it was never documented. And the other side, her attorney is asking that he produce all his pay stubs from the last 12 years, bank statements and things that he doesn't have, because he's saying, hey, I've always supported these children financially. And they're like, well, prove it. And of course, he can't do that.
Wow. See, so in a situation like you've actually assisted someone in a situation like that before, or is it just something you saw from afar from a different case?
No, I've assisted.
My listeners are curious to know how did that, what are the results from that?
It's still going on.
Oh, wow.
We're at a stage where we're trying to convince the courts that these documents are not retrievable. And we're trying to actually work with the mother to come up with a reasonable child support payment. Because right now it's knocking at the door of $100,000.
So in your opinion, in strictly your opinion, is court just, as far as how things are conducted in court, is it specifically just black and white? Is it other factors that can play a role into the outcome of the decision?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I'm one of the few people who would say that I don't think the system is a broken system.
Okay.
Yes, there's things that could be improved, but the system is set up in a way that justice should always be handed down. The problem is with the individuals responsible for managing the system. They're flawed, they're biased, they're prejudiced. So a judge in a situation like this, they can be reasonable and say, hey, these documents don't exist. Let's talk to the adult children now who are 20, 21. Let's ask them what it was like. How many times did you see the father? And we can get an idea whether or not this father was active financially and otherwise. But if the judge wants to say, no, I want to see documents, then that's on the judge. The judge is not being fair.
See, with that said, and to take a little turn of the corner here, you are an African-American male working within the legal system. So do you think that you've ever felt moments that were challenging that might have been due to you being an African-American male, work as an attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
Not so much in the family law arena.
Okay.
I feel the stigmatism. I feel the if you want to use the word racism, against the entire race. In a situation where I try to represent mainly fathers. That's where my passion is.
Okay.
I have a few women cases, but in almost every situation where I'm trying to fight for the father to see his child, and there's a judge who is not African American, the position is, well, it's almost like you throw your hands up. It's they're not in school, they're fighting. Well, so what? The impression almost is they all do that. So what are you worried about it?
Right.
I'm like, no. There's something has to be done. In one situation, I asked the judge to have the children at issue go into my mentoring program, and the judge said no. I'm like, what? Why? If you don't see it, I can't tell you. No, you can't tell me because you don't know.
Which goes to show, could you tell us more about your mentoring program, Growing Kings?
Yes, I have a mentoring program called Growing Kings. It's based in the Washington D.C. area. It's geared towards young men between the ages of 12 and 18. The primary purpose is to teach young African American men how to be respectful to females, whether it's their siblings, whether it's their mother, whether it's their significant other. And what caused this was seeing one of my daughter's boyfriends. She was dating a guy when she was a freshman in college. She's a senior now. And the guy was clueless to how to treat a woman. He was walking. He didn't hold the door open. He didn't pull the chair out. It's just like, and talking to him, I realized that he wasn't intentionally being like this. No one taught him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's where the idea came from, to teach young men to be responsible, to be respectful, to be committed. That's a big area that I think in family law you have. Whenever you see people in family court, it's because there was a level of being non-committed.
And just to provide an example on something that you spoke of earlier, just in the comparison of let's say, whether white, black, a judge, just the cross in cultures, sometimes the cross in cultures can be a wall. It can be a wall that can block an honest connection of understanding, which in turn can affect a ruling. I work in a mental health profession, and it is not uncommon for someone to prefer an African American woman, prefer a white woman, a white female woman, or male across the culture, whatever the culture is. It's not uncommon for that to happen because people in general just feel that there'll be a better correlation, a therapeutic relationship in that. So I use that as an example to explain. I can see how you ran into those challenges with the different cultures, as far as in the courtroom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and those differences, they're there because there are differences, and you just have to try to navigate around them.
Right. There's something very, 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 very important that I think that we tend to not pay attention to. Fathers in courtroom etiquette. I think this is something that is not spoken about enough, but I'd really like to pull in your professional opinion on this. I've actually seen situations to where we're talking about how to dress, how to conduct yourself inside of the courtroom. I've seen situations where an individual dressed up. The judge made a comment that the father was dressed up and dressed nice, spoke very well, and then ended up ruling against him in favor of the mother. So could you help provide some type, based on your experience, some type of professional opinion on proper courtroom etiquette for the fathers? Because it can get really emotional, and dressing proper, all that they feel that could play a role in judgment.
Right. And this is where the biases come in. The justice is supposed to be blind. You see Lady Justice and she has a blindfold on. So in an ideal situation, it shouldn't matter how you look in a courtroom. They're not looking at how you look. It should be just the facts and the law. But that's not the case. Your look, perception is to a great extent reality. So with that being said, you're not going to want to come into courtroom looking like you don't care. right? You don't want to come in looking like you
Flip-flops.
just got out of bed and you strolling in all late and, you didn't take any time or thought into the outfit that you put on because that's going to give the impression that this guy is not going to be a good father. If he couldn't dress himself, what is he going to do when he has to help dress a little one?
Listen, fellas, Jewel alert.
So you have to take time and make yourself presentable. Now, there's also the idea that someone who overkills, they're overcompensating for something else.
Here we go.
So now is not the time to break out your Gucci and your Armani exchange and go like you're going to a club, all your jewelry. You don't want to do that either.
Right.
You don't want to go to an extreme. You want to make yourself look presentable. Trust your own judgment to say, look, I'm going into court to try to persuade this judge that I'm an honorable man who loves my child or children. And then let that thought guide you in how you should dress.
Now, Mr. Phillips, are we taking into fact that economically, everyone financially has different situations, things of that sort? What is your thoughts on that? Some people don't have but a couple pair of shorts.
Well, if someone doesn't have a nice pair of slacks and a shirt and a tie, they should make some sort of effort to buy them. Because as a parent, there's going to be situations that pop up that they're going to have to spend money in the best interest of the child.
Right.
So if all you have is two pair of shorts and some T-shirts and you go into court like that, the impression is going to be, you mean you couldn't do something to make yourself look good for today? I can't trust you with giving you this child that you're going to have to do things much more often than this one day of court.
Wow. Mr. Phillips, where can everyone, as far as in social media, as far as in websites, where can anyone reach you that wants to get, assistance from your firm?
Well, the law firm has a website. It's the remuslaw.com. That's REMUS Law, LAW.com. There's a website being built as we speak, SolonPhillips.com, www.SolonPhillips, PHILLIPS.com. That it's being built in preparation of a book, a new book that I have coming out. It's called The Adventures of Uncle Billy and Ross, Life Lessons Made Simple. It's a story, it's a dialogue between an old guy named Uncle Billy and his young nephew, Ross. They're African American. Uncle Billy's extremely intelligent, wise guy, and he's teaching lessons that's taught from Napoleon Hill, Shakespeare, and other great minds that some African American communities may not have ever experienced. So I'm bringing these teachings into a community maybe for the first time.
There's a portion of the show. It's our slogan here at Triumphant Moments, encouragement for free. So we're asking you to provide some type of encouragement to our listeners right now. What is something that you can leave them with? Encouragement for free, Mr. Phillips.
Let's see. I guess the most compelling thing I could leave them with is do not look at failure as a setback. Failure is, in all actuality, your best friend. Because once when you experience failure, you're experiencing something that's going to teach you and grow you. You can never grow unless you fail first. So I wish that was something that was taught to me when I was younger. Embrace failure. Run to failure. If there's a situation that you're facing and it seems impossible, run to it and make some sort of effort anyway, even though failure might be expected. And when you do fail, learn from that failure and grow from it.
Mr. Phillips, we appreciate you here at Triumphant Moments for taking out time to come in for our lessons. Until the next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem at all. This is Triumphant Moments with T.Wood. Sometimes in life, you must fail in order to succeed. But one thing's certain, you never, ever, ever give up. Triumphant Moments.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.